and a new Witcher game, expensive-looking project from NCSoft, a pretty big publisher with a decent track record, but this seems a little bit different for them. This is kind of a narrative-driven, movie-like adventure, similar to something like a Heavy Rain, Quantic Dreams, Detroit Become Human style game. From what we've seen, it looks to have decisions and quick-time events, and your decisions and actions will actually change the shape of the story and the ending. Now, from what we really know so far, all we got to really go on is like a revenge quest after a man loses a loved one, like a girlfriend or a wife or something. Sounds pretty basic, yeah, sure, but there's got to be more to it. There's got to be a reason that they're telling this story with these crazy video game graphics. My money is on the voice actors and the performance capture because the characters look incredibly lifelike, so if they can really sell the emotion in this story, I'm all in. It doesn't have a release date yet, but it is looking really gorgeous. I mean, look at it. Next over at number 14, we have Kingdom Hearts 4. Yes, announced earlier this year. We're probably not going to hear much about Kingdom Hearts 4 for a while, but they did show us quite a bit, including what seemed to be real-time gameplay. Now, this is interesting because it takes place after the events of Kingdom Hearts 3, where Sora is in a new world called the Quadratum, and it's kind of like a lifelike, more realistic-looking city. So with that, they have to play Sora in a real-looking world, and it has to look damn good, and it had to have a game engine to really back it up, so it seems like Unreal Engine 5 is really powering these massive, lifelike cities. And I say massive because just the small glimpses we've seen and the large boss enemy and Sora flying into the world seems like it's going to be a pretty dense and detailed world. Interestingly enough, with Kingdom Hearts 4, more than any other game on this list, like, I'm not really looking for realistic graphics. I'm just looking for fun gameplay and cool Kingdom Hearts stuff. So hopefully, seemingly, we're still going to get that, but at the very least, baseline, we don't know too much about it yet. At least we know it's going to be pretty. Next, over at number 13, we have a game called Ill. Now, this looks like more of an independent project. It's been in the works for quite some time now, and they've been teasing it with a lot of very brief glimpses of gameplay. Some of it looking a little wonky, but the more we see it, the more it's shaping up to be pretty interesting. It even made an appearance at the Games Radar game showcase, and it's straight up a horror first-person shooter that looks really good. And the coolest part is the monsters themselves. They seem incredibly detailed, like hyper-grotesque, with tons of gross, drippy bits and tendrils coming from every inch of them, kind of like a cross between the Bergen monster from Resident Evil 2 and something out of the classic The Thing movie, but like turned up to 11. So that right there is pretty awesome, considering they look this visually scary and freaky thanks to the graphics. I just really hope they have the gameplay chops to back it up. But so far, the more and more we see of it, like I said, it does look better and better. Next, over at number 12, we have The Invincible. This is a first-person space exploration adventure-style game with a story focus that's a little bit different in style. It's more of a chunkier space sci-fi, it's a little more old school, and that really makes it appealing. Along with that, it does seem like it's taking advantage of Unreal Engine's new lighting stuff and photogrammetry, with the desert, planet-like environments that we have seen looking incredibly real. The rock faces, the sand, all of it looks stunning. Pair that down to the tiniest details on the player character's hands and detailed, cool sci-fi equipment, it seems like it's going to be a bit of a different experience. The Invincible is seemingly focused on...
Let's pause it, let's go check somewhere else. Maybe. Dan. Let's go check down here.
On a deep, like, legitimate sci-fi story, and I mean, you play as an astrobiologist. You don't play as, like, a badass space marine or anything. So it's definitely got the graphical things going for it, but it also seems like it has the story and gameplay ambitions to back it up. Next, over at number 11, we have Layers of Fears, which admittedly we don't know too much about, but we do know that it's a sort of combo collection slash updated version of the original 2 Layers of Fear games in one package, and now completely in Unreal Engine 5, which is pretty sweet because Layers of Fear is really underrated. It's not the most action-packed horror game or anything, but it is certainly a hell of an experience. So for them to redo it in Unreal Engine 5 and hopefully add some new content, it can be really enticing. Those games already really did rely on great art direction and cool graphics, so for them to step it up, I think that's pretty exciting. We know Layers of Fears, which I'm still getting used to saying, is coming sometime early 2023. Next, over at number 10, we have Redfall. This is Dishonored developers Arcane's newest game, and it's a 4-player, multiplayer, cooperative shooter where you're taking down hordes of vampires that have invaded a small New England town. Most importantly, for me as a solo gamer, you'll also be able to play this completely solo, but playing with friends means everybody has different abilities and you can take advantage and just basically do cool Arcane, Deathloop, Dishonored-style trick shots and cool moves. Really curious to see where this one goes, and graphically it does look pretty damn great. The art style is a bit more cartoonish, so on the surface it's a little trickier to see like the real graphical fidelity because things intentionally don't look hyper-realistic, but still, from what we've seen visually, it does look really impressive. I'm still curious to see how this one's actually going to play and how fun it's going to be, but it does look cool from a design standpoint, and hopefully we'll finally be playing that pretty soon. Next, over at number 9, we have The Day Before. Now, we've talked about this one for quite a while. This is the super ambitious MMORPG that's like a combination of The Last of Us and Days Gone, but also The Division, with open world city stuff, fighting, looting, PvE, PvP, zombies, customization, and incredibly killer graphics. Now, that's a lot to promise, and it seems like it's coming from a small developer, and they've since really delayed the game pretty heavily, so we don't know what's up, but what we initially saw of this game did excite us. Even if it was a small slice and it's still got a ways to go, if it can come out like what we've seen visually and with all those promised gameplay features, it could be sick. We'll probably be talking about The Day Before soon. You know, we still have some skepticism, but yeah, there you go. Next, over at number 8, we have a game called Hell Is Us. Now, this is published by Nacon and developed by Rogue Factor, and to be completely frank, we don't know too much about it, other than it's going to be pretty. We got a brief teaser trailer that showed some cool ideas that gave us some slight Control vibes, and it's seemingly going to tell a pretty mature story. Like I said, we don't know too much, so I'll just read the official game's description. Amidst a secluded country ravaged by civil war, discover the secrets of your past and confront the mysterious calamity that has befallen the region. A real adventure awaits you, where you will explore the dark side of human nature. Well, I guess from reading the game's description, it turns out hell was us all along. I'm sorry, terrible joke, but all we know right now is that it is coming to PS5 in 2023. Next, over at number 7, we have Ark 2, a game that has been announced and then kind of announced again, and we still don't know too much other than it's going to be Unreal Engine 5, and Vin Diesel is in it. Not only is he in it, but he's also apparently working behind the scenes with the production crew, and is going to be fairly involved with the game. You know, celebrities are going to celebrity, but ultimately this seems like it's going to be a bigger, badder Ark, and hopefully a prettier and less glitchy, weird, messed up one. Or really, to be honest, sometimes that weird, goofy jankiness is all the fun with Ark, right? As of right now, we know Ark 2 is coming in 2023. Next, over at number 6, we have Black Myth Wukong. Now, we've talked about this game quite a bit for quite some time now. We're hoping we finally see it at the...
Bitch. Come here. Get up. Get the fuck up. Get up, you motherfucker. Huh? Bitch ass. Stay hold and take it from me, bitch. I'll claim that maxed out, boss. Thank you. You're welcome, boss. Let's go sit down.
or sometime in 2023 because this Chinese-developed action-adventure RPG based specifically around ancient Chinese mythology looks pretty sweet. Obviously, you've probably heard it before. It seems very Souls-inspired, but the unique twist on lore and just some of the combat actions and boss battles we have seen have been pretty nuts. And also, shout out to the developers for just showing straight-up gameplay and not really wasting our time with too many cinematic trailers because seeing the game in motion in Unreal Engine 5 is incredibly impressive. I mean, look at this thing. Again, at this point, I don't know what more I can really say other than that the detail, especially when the character moves in the snow or the water, the way wind rushes and moves things in the environment, to just how fast and frenetic the combat is with sparks flying and not a thing slowing down. We really hope this game looks as good as it seems here when it finally drops. Next, over at number 5, we have a game called Quantum Error. Now, you may not have heard of this one, but this is a PS5 game billed as a cosmic horror FPS TPS. There's some seemingly cool story elements to the game, but essentially a quantum research facility is attacked, it's on fire, and you go in as a firefighter, and your job is to just save as many lives from the burning lab as possible and just get out. Then, of course, things devolve into chaos, and it gets spooky and weird and sci-fi. That's really it. And while on the surface it sounds a little bit generic, I think the firefighter spin is actually pretty cool and unique. The visual style also isn't quite what you'd expect. It's got a bit of a flat, kind of artistic style to it. They're not going for hyper-real, but still seemingly are taking advantage of the Unreal Engine with destruction and fire. But to be honest, we don't know too much about it. It just seems like a really, really cool idea. As of right now, we just know it's coming soon to the PS5. Next, over at number 4, we have a game called Instinction. Now, just when you thought we had too many dinosaur games, we got one more, but thankfully, this one looks pretty damn good, at least graphically. This is billed as a prehistoric action-adventure game with combat and exploration in multiple environments, but it's from a first-person perspective, and you have guns. So yes, it's you chasing down velociraptors in the jungle with an assault rifle, fighting saber-toothed tigers, big dinosaurs. The concept seems really simple and maybe goofy to some, but also just good, dumb fun. And from what we've seen, graphically, from water areas to dense jungle areas, both during the day and at night, seems pretty cool. The environments are incredibly, downright shockingly richly detailed. Along with that, just really detailed dinosaurs that can be outright terrifying. I wish this one had a release date. As of right now, it's just slated as TBA, but it looks damn cool. Now, next over at number 3, we have a game called Wrong to Us. Now, we talked about this in a video, we've highlighted it, a lot of other YouTubers have, just because it looks so weird and unique. It seems like it takes a lot of cues from something like Silent Hill, and it also just embraces a lot of horror movies with little nods here and there. But visually, from an art direction standpoint, at times, it can look downright stunning strong in 2022. If you're looking for something to play soon, today we've got 10 games from the survival genre, or games with survival gameplay elements, that you should keep an eye on this year. Let's get started off with number 10, with V Rising. Now, this is a bit of a different game. Rather than being a survival game as a human, this is a title that puts players into the role of a vampire. In this, players are awakened from a slumber that lasted centuries. Weak and needing blood, you begin your journey of gathering up easy prey before you're able to kind of rebuild your castle and your whole vampire life, if that's what you want to call it. However, being a vampire means sticking to the shadows during the day and thriving in the open at night. It's open world, and you'll be able to play online, either competitively or cooperatively, which could make for some pretty interesting situations. Be a vampire raider or a diplomat, you're going to have a lot of choices, it seems. Now, I've said this in many videos, and I'll say it again here. We can never have enough vampire games. There just aren't enough. Ultimately, V Rising is pretty cool, and we definitely 100% recommend it if you're playing on PC. Now, next over at number 9, Little Devil Inside will probably catch your attention immediately if it hasn't already from a visual standpoint. It's a unique-looking 3D action-adventure light survival title from the indie studio NeoStream. Now, overall, the game puts players to the task of hunting down and taking out creatures that lurk in this fantastical world. Now, next up, we're going to combine 2 games in one point, because they're actually kind of similar, but they both gained traction, so we figured they were worth mentioning. The first game is Rooted. This is a third-person-ish survival game set in a post-apocalyptic, abandoned world, where, of course, there's a big big focus on gathering materials and building a base and all that in this very gorgeous looking Unreal Engine 5 woods, but also you're exploring abandoned buildings and warehouses that have become overgrown. It looks eerie and creepy and lonely. That being said,
they just take a picture of us. Come here, Dick. Get up. Pussy. You, come here.
You clearly have no peace.
Pussy.
it also looks very early. There are some parts that look pretty janky and not so hot, so we're going to judge it more when we see more and we get to actually get our hands on it, but some people found it interesting, so we wanted to mention it. Another game that's very similar that also has been gaining traction is called Derelicts. This is also a very small project made by a very small team of like one person, and this is a first-person open-world survival game with abandoned elements, with creatures and some sci-fi elements, and it is also running in Unreal Engine 5, and it does actually look pretty gorgeous. This one looks a little more complex than previous, but since they are kind of similar situations, we didn't want to just give them a mention here. Both of them don't have release dates, but we're keeping an eye on them. Next up at number 7, we have Nightingale. Now, this is an open-world first-person PvE survival game that just immediately seems like way more than those typical buzzword descriptions. I mean, look at the style. It's clearly fantasy style, but also a kind of late 1800s Gaslamp style, meaning more fun gadgets, musket-style weapons, and cool looks to your characters. Now, along with that, some really incredible monster enemy designs. You're fighting, you're questing alone or with other friends, and you're building. But you're building cool buildings and operations from the time period. Now, the magic spin on this, while still kind of mysterious, just seems really compelling, too. Story and objective-wise, the game itself describes you as being stranded in a mystical world and you need to become a skilled realm walker and navigate through all of these interdimensional portals to find the last bastion of humanity. Sounds crazy. I barely know what any of that means, but crafting, building, fighting with a bit of a different feel and vibe than what we've seen before sounds good to me.
Anytime.
Now, next over at number 6, Dead Matter. Now, this game has a long history after many delays and crowdfunding campaigns and pushes. It still, either way, has a lot of potential. This is a new open-world survival horror type game. For those of you who haven't heard about it, players are dropped into a post-apocalyptic world where zombies flood the world, which, you know, sounds like pretty much every other game, but as you can see from the gameplay on screen here, it's a little different. You gotta scavenge for items, seek shelter, and it's a mix of video games you're probably already familiar with, like Tarkov or DayZ. There's a lot of working with other players or fighting against hostile players that are trying to get your stuff. And the developers behind this game, Quantum Integrity Software, are also making a game that focuses on customization here. There are plans to bring full modding support to the Steam Workshop. So there's the potential of other players really lending a hand into crafting something unique for this when it finally does launch. Now, next over at number 5, Occupy Mars, the game, is a simulation survival game. Now, as you can probably already tell from the title, players are tossed onto Mars where the goal is to sustain life. This is done in a couple of different ways. First, you'll need to gather enough resources to build up different structures, and then from there, you need to actually ensure there's enough power to keep the different places built online, managing all types of things like, of course, power, oxygen, atmosphere, food, all that. Now, this is a mix of simulation and strategic gameplay, from mining for goods and building solar panels to get power. It might not be for everyone, but for those that enjoy the wonders of space and are down to really like when we start to colonize Mars. Occupy Mars, the game, might be worth picking up when it launches, likely later this year. Next, over at number 4, we have Night is Coming. Now, this survival building game is slated for 2022, and frankly, it looks sick. Like, to combine survival and building elements with a horror fantasy world, it seems like a brilliant combination. You basically build out your own settlements piece by piece, managing every element to keep people alive, from cutting down trees and doing lumber, to hunting, finding food, farming. But there are encroaching dark evil forces, and that's where what really looks like some pretty engaging combat comes in. And I love a deep town settlement builder, but when you throw in some really, really cool character and loot designs and some really cool enemy and creature designs, that seems to be a match made in heaven. Now, we're actually really surprised that we haven't heard more about this game because, look at it. It's one of the cooler looking survival games coming this year, and we really hope it lives up to it. It's one of the cooler looking survival games coming this year, and we really hope it lives up to it.
Yes.
Now,
What about
next at number
smoke?
3,
Yes.
Frostpunk 2.
Cool.
The original Frostpunk
Here's a
brought
joint
players a
and a
strategy
smoke.
game as they attempted to
So
build
a joint now,
in
then
a
a
harsh,
smoke,
never-ending winter.
and
In it,
keep this
players
one,
have
I was
really
spare.
limited resources and a
And
group
here
of
is a
survivors
couple of notes.
that need
Thank
a lot.
you.
Every
You're welcome.
choice you
It's a
made
joint now.
was a critical one to keep everyone alive. So on paper, it's not quite a survival game, but you really get the same desperate sensation. Now with this sequel in the works, we're uncertain of just exactly when we'll get our hands on this one. It seems like this year, and in Frostpunk 2, players will once again be put back into the frigid storm the world is undergoing. But while the first game is based around like a coal system to heat and power up the city, this upcoming one seems to be all about oil extraction. And as a result, players can expect another difficult survival-y strategy city builder experience. You can also probably expect quite a few critical choices to pop up, which could flood precious resources into the city or turn the citizens against you, resulting in your demise, which happens a lot in the first game. If it's anything like that, these decisions will be absolutely crushing and hard to make, and we're sadistic and we're looking forward to that. Now down to number 2, Sons of the Forest. Now the first game, The Forest, from End Night Games, was a survival title as players were stuck in the woods looking for a means of escape and survival. It was a mix of survival and just a constant threat of creepy, hostile enemies that left fans really digging it. That thing took off. Now there's still players discovering that game to this day, but there is a sequel coming. It's been in the works for a minute. It's called Sons of the Forest, and players are seemingly taking a trek back into the woods as a means to hunt down the supernatural elements that lurk within it. From what we can tell so far, there is more emphasis on survival, with the players having to gather various resources, and of course, more hostile enemies lurking within the woods in the dark. You'll find that they can attack you and destroy your fortified base, which means that all that hard work might have to be completely redone before nightfall hits. If you played the first one, you know the drill. And if it is anything like the first game, it'll be a brutal yet satisfying traditional survival game. Now down to number 1, we have Raft. Raft seems like a really good combination of a traditional survival game like Ark or something like that, mixed with something a bit more fun like Subnautica or Stranded Deep, with some boat building co-op shenanigans like Sea of Thieves. I really think that's the pitch right there. That's really it, and I think that's the win. This just launched at the time of making this video, but it seems like people are really loving it. There are so many games out there that half-ass this genre, or just don't really bring anything fun or new, but Raft seems to be doing it right, celebrating some games that came before it, using those elements, but just with a fun, different spin. You slowly build out a big floating home ship and try to survive a journey across a massive ocean. Of course, you have to worry about not dying in the traditional survival ways, but also sharks. So yeah, like I said, it seems like this one is worth checking out if you're really into the genre. But those are 10 survival games worth keeping an eye on throughout 2022. If you got a new upcoming survival game that you're looking forward to this year, even if it just has some survival elements, whether it's a AAA big game or an indie game, let us
reality in games for quite a while, and sometimes it adds some massive stuff to games we love. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, the 10 biggest areas added as DLCs to open world games. Starting off with number 10, Forza Horizon 5's Hot Wheels DLC, kicking this one off with just a truly massive map. The Forza games love to go a little nuts with their DLC, but this one was like overboard even for them. The Hot Wheels DLC takes place on 3 massive floating islands, each with their own unique biome for you to race through, and the scope of it is completely awe-inspiring. It just looks like amazing all around, even if in reality you're spending most of your time just racing around on a bunch of orange Hot Wheels roads. Like, it's undeniably impressive and truly huge, even if it's not as dense as some of the stuff we're going to be seeing later in this list. It's huge. And number 9 is Dying Light's The Following DLC. Set outside the city of Haran, The Following feels really different from the main game for a simple reason. You have a car. Instead of just running around most vertical city environments, you're in the wild open wilderness, and you have a car. And it makes sense, too, because the map is significantly bigger. I'm not really sure how big it is. It feels bigger than the Slums map in the base game, and it might even be bigger than both the Slums and Old Town, but I'm not exactly sure. It's safe to say that it's very big, though. The storyline you're going through in this place isn't anything to really write home about, but it's so different from the base game. It's really worth going through if you've got enjoyment from the base Dying Light game. I personally did. I think Dying Light's a great series. I really enjoyed the second. I think all of the mechanics were improved upon, and that stuff I really like. I do have to say, I kind of like the story from the first better, and the following DLC, though it's very different from the main story, provides a nice contrast and a really large, really cool area to drive around in. And number 8, Fallout 4's Far Harbor, an interesting one. Far Harbor is set on the real-world Mount Desert Island off the coast of Maine. It's considered by a lot of fans to be one of the best parts of Fallout 4. There's some people who even go as far to say it's better than the main game. I would actually count myself among those people. This is a really, really good add-on. The mission starts off pretty simple. You search for a woman who's gone missing, and the trail leads you to this mysterious island of Far Harbor. It's a really moody place that captures this unique feeling compared to the main game, and the actual story is easily one of the best in the game, if not the entire series, which, when you compare Fallout 4 to, let's say, New Vegas, it's really nice to see that caliber of story appear within the context of Fallout 4. Not that Fallout 4 is bad, or even middling, for that matter. It's very good. New Vegas is just a level of storytelling it didn't quite get to, and Far Harbor, I think, approaches it at very least. It's just an all-around really cool island also, with a lot to explore. Like, there's interesting stories to find, unique monsters to kill, cool locations to explore, and everything you do here feels very significant. It's not necessarily enormous in terms of land mass, but it's also hardly small, and it's extremely dense with a lot of cool content that is very worth the time to hunt down. And number 7 is Iki Island from Ghost of Tsushima, another DLC, another mysterious island. This add-on, which takes place on a sister island to the main game,
smoking
is about the size of the first section of the original game.
Girl.
And if you've taken the time to fully explore that part of the game, you know that means Iki Island is pretty big. It's not as moody as Far Harbor, per se, but there's still a lot to explore here. You're mostly doing the same things as the original game, but the environment looks amazing, and the story is pretty darn interesting by my standards. Your main goal is to take on this Mongol shaman named the Eagle, but the story is really about dealing with Jin's past, and the game explores that in a pretty novel way. In terms of new things, it's not the most feature-rich DLC. Like, there's no big new thing here. It's just more Ghost of Tsushima, delivered in a slightly more compact package. But it's great, so it's not like we're complaining. And number 6 is Torna from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It's pretty rare that a JRPG gets a full-blown expansion like this, especially one at the actual quality of the Torna expansion. It's technically a standalone game, but considering it was included in the game's season pass, I'm just going to say that it counts. It's set in the distant past, like it's a prequel to the actual main game. If you played Xenoblade 2, you're aware of how important the lost country of Torna is to the story, and this add-on finally lets us see what that was like. It's got all the wide-open spaces you'd expect from a Xenoblade game, with some interesting new wrinkles to the combat system that actually simplify things in some ways, but add welcome depth in others. And the fact that they reworked combat this already know what to expect from the story, and things don't deviate a lot, but the exploration and the combat makes it a very worthwhile addition, and one of the best add-ons out there. And number 5 is Assassin's Creed Odyssey's Fate of Atlantis. Kind of a cheat, because this DLC doesn't just add one area, it adds 3 areas that are all huge, all unique, and each one has a pretty long story to go along with what functions as kind of a sequel to the main game. So separately, these areas aren't all that big. They're big, don't get me wrong, but when taken all together, it's a massive expansion that's pretty fun to explore. Visually, the first major area, Elysium, is probably the most impressive. This part of the DLC takes you to the Greek heaven, and it is a sight to behold. The second part of the DLC sends you to the underworld, which, while interesting, isn't the most exciting area to look around in. Kind of basically Mordor without the orcs. But the final part takes place in Atlantis, which is a crazy-looking issue city, and one of the coolest locations in the entire series, visually at very least. Even if getting around is kind of a pain, like, yeah, truly. But like Ghosts, there's not really like a ton of new stuff here, but if you're an explorer who likes to screw around in cool open world areas, this DLC is fantastic. And number 4 is the Frozen Wilds from Horizon Zero Dawn. Set in the northernmost part of the map, the Frozen Wilds DLC takes you to the unforgiving lands of the Bannock tribe. Just new weapons to get, some tougher machines to take on. There's really one really new one, the Fire Frost Claw thing. They added some interesting twists to combat, like the addition of control towers to heal nearby machines, as well as more dangerous variations of enemies called demonic machines. Like some of the previous entries, I wouldn't say the place is massive. Like, it's very big, but it's not like the biggest location in the game or anything. It's just dense and there's a lot going on. The new enemies is fun to take on. There's a lot of interesting facilities to explore and lore to find, and it's just an all-around excellent addition to an already solid game. And number 3 is Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC is Solstheim. For anyone who got into the Elder Scrolls through Skyrim, this DLC is just great. It's set on an island located northeast of Vardenfell, which this DLC takes you back to the land of the Night Elves with their strange houses and volcanic black soil. The place has a completely different vibe than the rest of Skyrim. Pretty much the only thing that these places have in common is the snow. One unique distinction about this place is that it's a very big area that isn't an add-on to just one game, but actually 2. Solstheim was the island you went to in the Blood Moon expansion on Morrowind, and a lot of the major landmarks from that add-on are still here with Dragonborn. When you explore, you can even hear some of the original tracks from Morrowind as background music. It's a real nostalgia trip if you play Morrowind,
Yep.
but even if...
Cool. Let's do this. Three, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Go.
Oh my goodness.
Come on. Let's do this. Done. Come on. Let's go. 25 minutes. Sure. Oh, hi. It's been a month, hasn't it? Well, sadly, this is the last time you'll be seeing me for now. But I'll tell you what happened. Since then, my gang betrayed me, so I set them up. I got me a new mansion / new compound for my new gang. I am the boss of the Tech 9 gang, aka the Tech 9s. So yeah, I guess I'll see you in a month or a year, who fucking knows. I'll see you whenever the fuck I see ya. Peace out, my dudes. Bye.